Hi, Steve Adler. Good evening. Thanks for joining. You got a minute? Let's go through some numbers. We have a guest tonight. We're going to spend most of the time talking to Bob Cole, who is, even though we don't agree all the time, one of my civic heroes in this city. But first, let's begin to take a look at the numbers, always starting with hospitalizations. The number of hospitalizations down a little bit. It's at 67. The 7-day running average you can see on the left-hand side is 75.1. Recall that when we got to 70, we knew we have to start taking a look at whether or not we start pulling back even more than we have been. It's somewhere between 70 and 123. The question is, how fast are we moving? If we're moving really fast, we have to act quickly. If we're able to change the trajectory, if we can smooth out that trajectory a little bit, then we have more time that we can wait and see how events play out. Tomorrow, City Council meeting. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning. Won't last over 3 hours. We're going to hear from the modelers and the doctors, Dr. Escott and Dr. Myers, who does our modeling. And they're going to tell us whether we're screaming into it or not and what the indicated action is. But it is of concern. Now that we're above 70, now it's 75, but we need to figure out what those trajectories are. Off to the right side, number of new cases, 753 new cases today. 7-day running average is down at 433. So 753 is an alarming number. The last several days we've been down in the 350 range. I'm thinking that 750 is an anomaly, that it is the kind of the backlog being represented in cases from this weekend, the holiday weekend. I hope I'm right, but that's why we use a 7-day running average as opposed to using what happens on a specific day, because using a 7-day average smooths those kinds of things out. The numbers in the blue in the middle or green. I'm never sure quite what color that is. The 7-day running average for hospitalizations is 444. We have 458 in the hospitals tonight, which means we're running about at our 7-day average. That would indicate, generally speaking, that we're kind of holding our own and not accelerating through it. 147 is the 7-day average for intensive care unit folks. We have 149 intensive care units tonight, again, online with the 7-day average. Folks on ventilators, 75 is our 7-day running average. We have 91 people on ventilators. That's a concern for us. Ventilators are running higher numbers than that 7-day running average. It's an indication, a reminder that this is still a very serious disease. And remember that ventilators is the last of the leading indicators. First, we see cases, anywhere from 3 to 14 days after an infection. And then after that, we see hospitalizations, then ICUs, then ventilators as the numbers work their way through our system. What you're seeing when you look at ventilators is really the behaviors that existed in our community 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago, probably set those into motion. Let's go to the next chart. This is the second page. Shows us that we have gone over now 13,000 new cases in our city. You can see in green the daily numbers for hospitalizations, ICUs, and ventilators that we talked about a second ago. And look at deaths at 159. That number at 159 has gone up by 22 in the last 3 days. 22 people have passed away in the last 3 days. As I said a moment ago, it's a reminder that this is a serious thing. We remain focused on the groups that seem to be most hit by this, and it is the communities of color. Most specifically, if you look at the graphs, the Hispanic community. Today, Austin Public Health released a draft strategic plan for addressing the outbreak in the Austin's Hispanic community. It is a draft working strategy. We're asking for the community to take a look at that plan, especially folks in the Hispanic community, give it their advice and suggestions, additions, changes. On the screen, you can see how you go and link to that. If you have any problems finding that, reach out to my office and we can direct you. We need your help. Austin Public Health is asking everybody in the community for their feedback. While we're doing that, I want to remind you that this weekend, Austin Public Health is hosting a multilingual community conversation on Zoom. It is Saturday at 10 o'clock. It is free. There'll be translators to interpret to and from multiple languages: English, Spanish, Arabic, Burmese, Vietnamese. To register, please go to that banner. If you have trouble finding that, reach out to my office and we can help get you set. That's to talk about, it's a multilingual conversation. We can talk about anything that people want to talk about. What I'm excited about this is it's going to give an opportunity for people that speak two different languages, neither being English, are going to have a chance to be able to speak to one another. I'm excited about that format, and Dr. Kazike Prince in my office is one of the moderators of that conversation. I just want to put in a plug for the census while I have everybody's attention. Still in danger of severely undercounting people who live in certain communities, parts of our city. We've talked about the census before, but I want to remind you that getting everybody counted has a very direct impact, not only on how many votes we have in Congress, how many votes Austin has, the power that we have in the state legislature, but it also dictates funding formulas. So when the federal government or the state government gives money out to folks, they look at the census count to figure out how much of those funding comes to Austin. It's how they fund national school lunch programs for our schools, the special supplemental program for women, infants, and children, the WIC program that so many in our community rely on and get assistance from. It's nutrition services for folks that are aging in our community. The food bank uses census data to determine the areas that need the greatest amount of services. So it's really important that everybody participate in the census and participate in the count. We're just never going to have another opportunity like this to impact funding for another 10 years. It only takes minutes. It can be done online. If you need any help with that, let me and my office know and we'll assist you. That all said, tonight I want to talk to someone and have you hear from someone that has had the corona virus and is recovering. He and his family. This is, again, one of my civic heroes in the community, Bob Cole. Why don't you bring him in, Anita? Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, you want to talk about coronavirus?
Sorry about that. We could probably sneak a little of that in.
Oh, okay. I thought you want me to assess how you handle the homeless situation, you and the council.
You've done it to me several times when I've been on your show.
This is a reversal of roles.
This is called turnabout and fair play. So Bob obviously has his radio talk show in the mornings. Not all the time does everybody on that show agree with the policies that this council takes. So I go on there and Bob is always polite and kind, but frequently challenging. So the thought of actually having you here on this show, where I was going to say where I had the buttons this time to control it, except everybody knows I don't and Anita does. So,
but you're a courteous man, so I certainly hope you won't interrupt me tonight as much as I typically interrupt you. It's already happened.
Again, turnabout and fair play and all that.
Yeah.
But you did, I remember the first time that I was on your show, it was when I was running for election as a brand new candidate. and you invited me to come on the show. And after I accepted, as I recall, you told me that I had to sing, which was not something that I expected.
Well, now, it had kind of been a long-standing tradition that had started back in all the years that I was paired with Sammy Allred, that if you're running for a big office, you had to come in and answer some questions and see if we liked you and size you up and all that. But it was also said, well, we like to sing along with some songs. You got to sing a song. And it started, we had George Bush, before he was running, singing songs at Christmas, doing Jingle Bells, Rick Perry, other folks that had run for mayor. So here's this Steve Adler loyal guy who was, as I recall at the time, masquerading as a conservative, middle-of-the-road guy, seemed very likable. And I said, well, I think I need to sing because Mike Martinez was in here. Isn't that who you ran against first?
It was.
And he sang whatever. Well, now, that's when you found that out. You practiced. You hired a guitar player to come. That's
anything to drown me out singing is what I was calling.
And what was it? Was a Western song like El Paso or what was it?
El Paso.
I still have the tape. Mayor Lord Adler.
Mayor. Wow.
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso.
And I'm not going to sing it again because it was not a good show.
No, but I'm saving the old tape for the right moment. But you have been, and I don't say this gratuitously, we've been lucky enough to have relationships that are pretty good with most all mayors. But not all of them, when things got a little dicey, wanted to come on or willing to come on, but wanted to come on. And I ended up apologizing to you after 2 or 3 of these interviews we did, or conversations, I like to call them. And I get a little emotional and go, well, that's just bull butter. You know better. You know better. I'd end up talking like that on the air, and I pride myself in not doing that. And then I'd apologize. He said, no, don't apologize. You were fair. You were fair. Can we do it again next week? And I've never figured out why you have a passion for pain, but I sure admire it. You want to be in front largely of an audience that doesn't necessarily agree with you. Now, in Austin, Texas, that ain't hard. Obviously, people, just for instance, the mention, it's in the country as well, of mask. I don't have to tell you. But I tell you, for people to align, in my opinion, I felt this way before I got it, believing that it would be helpful to wear a mask and would be not just considerate, but as responsible as, not walking into a grocery store with no shirt on and no shoes. There's just certain things that we know can cause problems or be better. And what do you have that's better than a mask? But this whole thing has kind of devolved. And I don't want this to be political because that's what I'm whining about. And that is that if you wear a mask, you're a socialist. You want the government to control you. And I'm not wearing a mask because, we'll say the other side, because I refuse to give in. Like, wait a minute. What do you got? You can't handle the social distancing thing. They open up the bars, the restaurants. You're still way too close to people. You even though you try in a grocery store, you can't navigate 6 to 10 feet at all times. What do you got? You got a treatment? You got some kind of virus thing? Nothing. And so the mask is really the only thing. And I was chided by most of the folks that I especially work with for being the most fastidious and diligent of mask wearers. And I did let my guard down a couple of times and bow to social pressure. And there's just probably no question in my mind that it was probably one of those occasions, especially as we learn more, finally, conclusively, about how it's definitely transmitted, the droplets through the air. And sure enough, it got me. And I wasn't cocky. I was already taking, some megadose vitamins, the stuff I'd read about, D3 and zinc. And I have type O blood, and those significant studies do appear to be significant. This is all over the world. Less incidence by far of type O blood, and faster recovery if you get it. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm careful, and I got type O blood. I got to pass, and then I get it, and you don't want it. Now I have a couple friends one's 35, 40 years younger than me, and the other's 10 years younger. They had it worse than me. There's a 4 or 5 day stretch if you're going to come back out of it fairly quickly. It's bad.
Well, talk about that. Talk about what it was like. What is it? What is it?
Different for everybody. I mean, there's a commonality of certain things, but it's like, what's the first thing you're going to have? Well, it's clear. It just doesn't affect everybody that way. As you know, with asymptomatic, you may never really know it. And that makes this thing kind of burdensome quite clearly. But now, for instance, with my own family, the first real, I hate fever. I just can't stand it. I'm a baby. If I get 98.7, I'm like, I'm going to crawl under the covers. I'm a wimp. But it was Father's Day Sunday, and my son had come over for Father's Day for dinner because he's also was very vigilant. He works in Major League Baseball. He wants to get back to work. And he would not go to a restaurant even. And so, okay, so Linda, his mother, my wife, fixed a great dinner. And I hadn't eaten all day. I was hungry, but I couldn't eat. And I realized I didn't feel well. After dinner, we sat down and watched some sports reruns. I go, man, I think I got a fever. So I took it, and I had like 101. And boy, my son shot out of here like a rocket. Well, he came down with it in 2 days. My wife came down with it within like 2 to 3. But the come down with it did involve fever for my wife, for instance, about day 4. She got the horrendous vertigo and still has it. Not nausea, vertigo. My son lost his taste and smell immediately. And I hear that from a lot of people. I didn't lose mine till like day 4 or 5. So as bad as I felt, I could eat and sleep. You get really weak. And, even if you're 20 years old, you lay in a bed largely for 5 days. A doctor will tell you the atrophy on a 20-year-old that's in great shape is significant. You get to be 60 like me, or maybe, 70 like you, it becomes an issue. Oh, we went to that again. I'm sorry. But so that to answer your question, as I'm sure you've assumed, there's a commonality of symptoms that even include COVID toes. I've had this eye thing, which you don't hear too much about. Man, they just puffed up and itch and they're red and they water and vision is blurry and you try to get it back. And that's one of the few things left now. Because I feel great as of yesterday. Okay, not totally great, but consider where it was. I could, even after the fever was gone and some of these other congestion and all, I couldn't hardly walk to the kitchen without saying, man, I need to check my oxygen level, which got down to about 89. The first 2 days I had this, that oxygen was running 97, 98. When I was diagnosed in a hospital emergency room, they spent 4 to 5 hours with me. I got quite a workout. I was still running 98% oxygen. I've got it back today, yesterday and today to 96.
So this would have been like 3.5 weeks ago that you're just now coming up.
I believe today's day 18, so 2.5. Yeah. I believe that's it. Yeah. That's what I count.
Any trouble breathing or coughing? Anybody in your family having that symptom?
I didn't have very much of a cough, but boy, that breathing thing, that's one of the first things we heard about, months ago. Now I see that one. Even when you'd stand up, it's not like you feel, for me, that I felt like, oh, I can't get my air, but it was like, I'm not breathing right. And then you get lightheaded. And, it is, the weakness is something that differentiates it from the flu. You get weak with the flu, but then these other interesting things that happen. I had this, I read a lot about COVID toes. I saw those pictures. Thank goodness I didn't have the physical representation of that. I always made fun of that. But I have had, and even still have a little bit, like a constant tingling in the top of my foot and all my toes, like I had neuropathy, and I don't. Well, that's not like a flu symptom. Where's that stuff coming from? So it is introducing all of those things, and when they come and how they affect you. Now, this party that I attended and got there late, they were all waiting on me we're playing 3 hours worth of poker. And the fellow that put it on was a great friend, and he had planned it for months and thought, well, for sure we'll be by this by then. But as I was coming in, he met me and I was wearing a mask and he said, "Bob, you just can't do it. Come on, take it off." I said, "Yeah, stop it. Come on." Because we're friends. And I said, "I'm wearing a mask." He said, "Nobody's wearing a mask. You're going to make them feel bad." Well, that's the same thing. Now I see why he did it. The Governor Abbott, I mean, he wasn't wearing a mask. He was doing all these press conferences for a month, telling everybody to wear a mask. They wouldn't wear a mask. So I visited with he and his staff, and I said, "This is you guys always talk about optics. This is the definition of optics. You should wear a mask. Well, why aren't you wearing one?" You know what the staff told me, candidly, was, "Well, they don't want to make the reporters and everybody else in the room feel uncomfortable." That's bowing to social pressure. I noticed, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, governors started wearing masks. You won that one. You won that one.
Well, the state won that one. The community won that one, and it's helped.
That's classy, and that's how you handled it. He went after you a couple of times, and your responses were always like that. I prefer to focus on how we make it work. That's good. That's good. I have trouble doing that.
Well, it was interesting. We're taking some council action tomorrow. We're going to get a briefing, and then there's an ordinance that lets us use our nuisance powers in this situation. It also gives us greater powers to be able to use what Dr. Escott does. And just moments before we went on air, I got a letter from the governor supporting what the city council is doing tomorrow. And so I'm encouraged to have gotten a letter from the governor supporting what we were doing.
Especially since you serve with at least one council member that publicly this week said, "We're just going to do what we want, regardless of what the state said." I mean, that's kind of asking for a showdown. So I sure hope that doesn't happen. Again, and frankly, as you said, in the interest of this being right. And I just wish folks wouldn't say people that wear a mask are trying to crush our economy and all that. Hey, the Asian countries where they've all been, living on top of each other. Now, we've spoofed on them for years about, they go to Vegas and they wear a mask. And now we get it.
Right. There's a lot to learn. I like your story that it was that you think it was just that one time that you went in, bowed to the peer pressure. I was talking to somebody in Austin. She was telling me about her 26-year-old nephew who was just religious about isolating, religious about wearing masks, lives in Houston, went to a bar, immediately had the virus, and he passed away 2 days ago.
Oh.
So it's all ages, and this is an incredibly infectious thing, and it just hits people.
And another thing that may be helpful to folks, like, is that I think it created a lot of confusion that you get this and you're over it for sure in 14 days. Well, that 10 or 14 day thing largely was if you were exposed to someone, you needed to give your body time to see if you will exhibit symptoms or try to get tested and stay away from everybody else. It doesn't mean it takes 14 days. What I learned from the ER doc and a couple of other doc friends, if you get exposed to it and you're going to get it, the droplets attached and all, then it's going to happen in the first 24 hours. You're going to know it if you're going to have symptoms in 36 to 48 hours. And so I can't say for sure, but most likely that's the place I was in this little room with 23 people for hours. What was really confounding at first is that I got a hold of those folks through the host and all right away. I will tell you another one of these things is people feel bad for you, but if you're the one telling them or you're the one that they're told about that may have exposed them, they don't have a good reaction to it. I thought I had great relationships with some of these people, and it's how dare you? And I'm serious. You understand a little bit maybe about how folks are often treated differently for how they look or being a leper. Because also in my life, I have had MRSA. And I don't get sick much, but when I do, it's a doozy. I had MRSA, and you can't see it behind this obligatory beard I've grown for. Never had one this long. But they had to cut out a huge hunk. I got a big old Johnny cash scar here, and it had almost gotten to my brain. and they were on the last antibiotic. And I was hospitalized for like 7 or 8 days. But when it was time to come back to work and I was cleared, a couple of people went to HR even and said, if he's here, we're not coming. I'd walk down the hall, people would run the other way. I'm not saying it's quite that bad, but like all the people I work with say, you're going to get 2 tests before you come back. They want me in my house another 3 weeks before I see anybody. And some of that is out of concern for me, but most of it is folks that if you do that. And what was confounding, as I was saying, Mayor, is that the first 3 or 4 days, these folks were trying to go get tested and all. And we were on this text thread, and I was really starting to lose my ability to even look at the phone, let alone respond. But they were, hey, I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And I was like, that's weird, because either somebody had it there, asymptomatically maybe, and I got it, or I had it when I came in there and could have given it up to 23 people. A week later, we've got 3 people now tested positive, especially the guy who was sitting right to my left. If you're going to be around people that have it, it's clear you're going to get it. Mayor, I know you've thought about this. I had this theory driving home that night, all the way from Georgetown back to South Austin. And I couldn't make phone calls because it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, right? So I was thinking, I said, this is a weird thing. Everybody is basically going to get this at some point. The evidence is just there. But as you've been working so hard on, how it's handled and getting on it early is just huge. Now, I can't prove that. There are epidemiologists and health experts saying, yeah, we've not seen anything quite like this, but it's just going to have to work its way through. But we've got to do it carefully.
We have to do it carefully. One lesson to be learned from what you said, and it's really true, there's an awful lot of people who are asymptomatic that have it, don't have any symptoms, they're infecting other people, and they never know that they had it. So you could be in a party with somebody, they could all say none of us had it, and 3 people in the party could have had it and never know that they had it.
If I could go back to our, well said, our usual role where I ask you the question. But folks, especially with the lab going down and the explosion, and it's all around the country, but especially, in Austin and Houston specifically. We're doing as many tests as we can, but the labs are behind. If you can get scheduled, get an appointment for one. Right now, apparently, from what I'm seeing and reading and hearing, anecdotally and factually, 3 to 5 days to get the test. Then another 7, could be 10 days before the results back. Everybody's going to have to get tested to get back in the workforce. If they do contract it, how are you guys looking at handling that? For instance, if I've got to go get 2 tests at least 24 hours apart before I can go back into the public, how am I going to get that done on the current trajectory? That'd be like 2023.
Well, the answer is you can't.
Just can't.
With the numbers that we have. And the labs are so overloaded that, we have people that showed up today's count at 750 who got tested 10 days ago. So right now, the whole system for testing has been stretched beyond where it can go, which is why if anybody has symptoms, they should, get a test if you can, but just assume that you have the virus and stay home so that you don't pass it to other people. Isolate, as best you can, even if you don't have a test, if you have the symptoms, and that's important. I don't know that eventually everybody has this because I am an optimist, and I believe that, by the end of the year or into the first half of next year, there'll be a vaccine. But absent a vaccine, most everybody's going to get this.
Mm-hmm.
Be with us for a long time. But with a vaccine, I think we can stop that, as we have with a lot of other illnesses. I am concerned about us in the short term. The infection level is so high, which is kind of why we were on that trajectory the last few weeks. I'm happy that people are trying to bend it, but we're still in a really scary place right now. Probably, I hope tomorrow we'll learn we have more options, but we're right on the edge, and people need to to listen to folks like you and recognize it doesn't take much to catch this thing.
And I tell you, you feel bad when you give it to your family, but you also feel bad. I mean, maybe I gave it to the folks I was around when I let my guard down. And surprisingly, a certain percentage of these folks, regardless of age, pass away. We're past these distorted looking numbers, inflated looking numbers in, say, zip codes or cities that were really coming out of that environment of nursing homes. Would you agree we're past that? It's more equitable now. It's everywhere. This is where these deaths are coming from. It's still mostly older, but now the infection rates, as you know, are more than half, 60-something% under the age of 40.
No question, but that the infections now are getting more evenly distributed, both by age and by everything else. Still in our community, populations of color much more likely to end up in the hospital. Someone who gets it, if they're African American, if they're Black, much higher risk of dying. So a lot more people are getting it. It's kind of an equal opportunity kind of thing now. But still, in those populations that are most susceptible, it's hitting them the hardest. And that's where we're going to focus. Bob, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking to me. We're past the amount of time that we usually go. I'm not going to do a grab bag tonight, mailbag, because we've gone a little bit long. Send in your pictures and your stories to us. And Bob, thanks a lot for joining us.
Mayor, I got to tell you, honestly fun, especially in this kind of role reversal. I'm a radio guy, and you can see why I'm not on TV. But I'm going to praise you again and again. It's going to sound like a good old butt kiss, but I mean it. You've gotten really good on this television thing. You are. You're not that good on radio, but you're good on TV. You've gotten really good and comfortable. People see you smile, and you're warm, natural, sincere, casual, friendly, relaxed, credible on at least this subject. I admire what you've done on many things.
Well, don't get confused, everybody. He's never this nice to me when I'm on the radio.
No, I have been, but then of course I get criticized for why didn't you rake him over the coals?
Really?
Yeah, as you know.
Bob, thanks. I'm gonna let everybody go. Hey, everybody, good night. Take care of yourselves and be safe.
Have a good night.
Bob, thank you.